Giselle Brennan had been warned that accepting the summons meant certain death, yet she stood at the iron gates anyway, her breath fogging in the midnight air as snow began to fall over the hidden estate that shouldn't exist in the middle of Los Angeles. The mansion rose before her like something carved from shadow and ice, all soaring spires and Gothic arches that belonged to another century entirely. She could see the glow of candlelight in the windows, actual candles, not electric, and her hands trembled as she gripped the envelope that had arrived at her cramped studio apartment 3 nights ago. Heavy black paper sealed with crimson wax, containing an invitation written in silver ink that seemed to shimmer with its own light. You have been chosen. Come to the address below at midnight on the winter solstice. Refuse and your family's debts will be called in full. Accept and they will be forgiven. You have until the appointed hour to decide. The debts were real enough. Her father's gambling, her mother's medical bills, her younger brother's college tuition that Giselle had promised to cover before everything fell apart. $200,000 she didn't have, owed to people who had made it very clear what would happen if she didn't pay. Then this invitation had arrived, and with it the impossible promise of freedom. The gates swung open without her touching them, smooth and silent despite their obvious age. Giselle's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked up the long drive, her worn boots crunching on gravel that sparkled like crushed diamonds. The cold bit through her thin coat, but she forced herself forward. She'd looked up what she could about this address, about the rumors that swirled around it. Most people insisted the mansion didn't exist at all, that the lot was empty. Others whispered about the families who lived there, the beautiful pale people who were never seen in daylight, who threw elaborate parties that lasted until dawn, and some whispered about the brides. Every generation, they said, the lord of the house took a wife. A human wife, chosen from among the desperate and the indebted, the girls who had nowhere else to turn. They went into that mansion dressed in white, and they were never seen again. Some claimed the brides ran away, freed from their obligations and given new lives far from here. Others said darker things, spoke of ancient thirsts and the price of immortality. Giselle had told herself it was all nonsense, urban legend and superstition. But standing here now, looking up at the mansion that radiated wrongness and old magic, she wasn't so sure. The front doors opened before she could knock. A woman stood there, ageless and beautiful, with skin like marble and hair the color of freshly fallen snow. She wore a gown that might have been fashionable in the 19th century, all black velvet and silver embroidery, and her eyes were the pale gray of winter storms. Miss Brennan, the woman said, and her voice was like music played on crystal glasses. We've been expecting you. I am Seraphine, steward of this house.
Please come in from the cold.
Giselle stepped across the threshold, and immediately the temperature changed. It was still cool inside, but not uncomfortably so, and the air smelled of roses and something else. Something copper-sweet that made her stomach turn. The entry hall was enormous, all marble floors and soaring ceilings painted with frescoes of night skies and hunting scenes. Candelabras held hundreds of candles, their light dancing across tapestries that looked older than the country itself. This way, Seraphine said, gliding more than walking across the floor. The master will see you now. Wait, Giselle said, her voice coming out smaller than she'd intended. I don't even know what this is. The invitation didn't explain anything except that your family's debts would be forgiven if you came. Seraphine turned to look at her, and there was something almost like pity in those pale eyes. You are here to be offered a choice, Miss Brennan, the master will explain. But I will tell you this, because I was human once very long ago, and I remember what it was like to be afraid. He will not force you. Whatever happens tonight, the choice will be yours. That should have been comforting, but somehow it wasn't. Giselle followed Seraphine through a maze of corridors, past rooms filled with antique furniture and paintings of beautiful pale people with white hair and knowing eyes. She saw no one else, heard no sound except their footsteps and the rustle of Seraphine's gown. They stopped finally before a set of double doors carved with intricate scenes of roses and thorns, wolves and ravens, all intertwined in a pattern that hurt to look at too long. Seraphine pushed them open and stepped aside. The master awaits, she said softly. Giselle's mouth was dry as she walked into the room beyond. It was a study or library, every wall lined with books that climbed to the high ceiling. A fire burned in a massive fireplace, and before it stood a man who made her breath catch in her throat. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a presence that seemed to fill the room despite his stillness. His hair was pure white, falling past his shoulders in a straight curtain that caught the firelight like spider silk. His skin was the pale of marble or snow, perfect and smooth, and when he turned to look at her, his eyes were a deep crimson that should have been impossible. He wore all black, a shirt and trousers that looked tailored to perfection, expensive in a way that whispered rather than shouted wealth, and he was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff and wanting to jump. Miss Brennan, he said, and his voice was deep, cultured with an accent she couldn't quite place. Old European perhaps, but not quite anything she recognized. Thank you for coming. I am Yaroslav Frost, and I am very pleased to meet you. Giselle found her voice somehow. You're the Vampire King. She'd meant it as a question, but it came out as a statement. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. That is one of my titles, yes, though I prefer simply Yaroslav when we are in private. He gestured to a chair near the fire. Please sit. I imagine you have many questions. I don't understand any of this, Giselle said, but she sat because her legs were shaking. The invitation, the debts, this place. None of it makes sense. Yaroslav moved to a small table and poured wine into 2 crystal glasses. He brought one to her, and she noticed that his movements were perfectly controlled, inhumanly graceful. It is quite simple, really. I am in need of a wife. You are in need of financial security and freedom from debt. I am proposing a transaction. A transaction. Giselle stared at the wine without drinking it. You want to buy me? I want to offer you a choice, he corrected gently. Marry me, live here as my queen, and your family will want for nothing. Their debts will be erased, their futures secured. You will have wealth beyond measure, safety, and every comfort you could desire. And in return, you would be my wife in truth. You would live here in this house, and present yourself at my side when required. You would give me your companionship, your presence. His crimson eyes met hers steadily. I will not lie to you or hide the nature of what I am. I am a vampire, ancient and powerful, and I have needs that must be met, but I do not take unwilling blood, and I do not harm those under my protection. Giselle's heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. The other brides, the ones before me, what happened to them? Something shifted in Yaroslav's expression, a flicker of pain that was gone almost before she could register it. They died, he said quietly. Every one of them, despite my best efforts to protect them. It is an ancient curse, one that I have spent centuries trying to break. Every bride I take dies before the dawn of our wedding night. The room seemed to tilt. And you're still looking for wives? You're still doing this? Because the curse must be broken, Yaroslav said, and there was steel in his voice now. Because I will not let ancient magic dictate my fate forever, and because each bride came to me willingly, knowing the risks, choosing this path for their own reasons. That's insane. Giselle stood up, wine sloshing in her glass. You're asking me to marry you knowing that I'll die? That's not a choice, that's a death sentence, perhaps. Yaroslav set his own glass down untouched. Or perhaps you will be different. Perhaps you are the one who will survive, who will break the curse that has bound me for so long. I have searched for centuries, and something about you called to me, Miss Brennan, something in your bloodline, your spirit. I believe you may be the key. That's crazy, Giselle whispered, but she didn't move toward the door. This whole thing is crazy. Yes, Yaroslav agreed. But you came here anyway, because the alternative is watching your family suffer, watching your brother give up his dreams, watching your mother die for lack of treatment you cannot afford. I am offering you a chance to save them, even if it costs you everything. Giselle closed her eyes, hating that he was right, hating that she was actually considering this. If I say yes, when would the wedding be? Tomorrow night, Yaroslav said. The winter solstice is a time of power, of change. It is the best chance we have to break the curse. That's impossible. I can't plan a wedding in a day. I can't. Everything will be prepared, he said calmly. You need only say yes or no. If you say yes, you will spend today here, resting and preparing. Tomorrow night we will wed, and then... He trailed off, and for the first time she heard uncertainty in his voice. Then we will discover if you are the one who survives. Giselle opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him. He stood there like a king, proud and powerful. But she could see the loneliness in him too, the weight of centuries and loss. How many brides had he watched die? How many times had he hoped only to fail? Why do you keep trying? She asked softly. If it never works, why keep doing this? Yaroslav's expression softened. Because hope is all we have in the end. Because I refuse to believe that I am meant to be alone forever, that every woman who takes my hand is doomed, and because somewhere out there is the one who will survive, the one who will stand beside me as an equal and a partner. I have to believe that, or the centuries become unbearable. It was the most human thing he'd said, and it broke something in Giselle's chest. She thought of her mother in the hospital, of her brother's acceptance letter to MIT that he'd never be able to use, of the men who had come to her apartment with threats and promises of violence. She thought of the life she'd been living, paycheck to paycheck, drowning in debt, watching everything she loved slip away. If I do this, she said slowly, and if I die, you'll still make sure my family is taken care of? That promise stands? You have my word, Yaroslav said. No matter what happens, they will be safe and provided for. I will see to it personally. Giselle drained the wine in one long swallow, feeling it burn down her throat. Then yes, I'll marry you, I'll be your bride. She expected him to look triumphant or satisfied or something. Instead, Yaroslav just looked sad. Thank you, he said quietly. I will do everything in my power to keep you alive, Giselle Brennan, I swear it. Seraphine appeared as if summoned, gliding into the room with that same ethereal grace. Take Miss Brennan to the bride's chambers, Yaroslav instructed. See that she has everything she needs. Tomorrow will be a long day. The bride's chambers turned out to be a suite of rooms that were larger than Giselle's entire apartment, all done in shades of cream and silver and deep blue. There was a bedroom with a canopy bed that looked like something from a fairy tale, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub big enough to swim in, and a sitting room filled with comfortable chairs and more books than she could read in a lifetime. The wardrobe has been prepared, Seraphine said, opening an enormous closet to reveal racks of beautiful clothes in every style imaginable, and the wedding gown is there. She gestured to a dress form in the corner, draped in white silk that seemed to glow in the candlelight. Giselle walked over to it slowly. The gown was beautiful, medieval in style with long sleeves and a fitted bodice, embroidered all over with silver thread in patterns of roses and stars. How did you know my size? The master has ways of knowing what he needs to know, Seraphine said, not unkindly. Try to rest, Miss Brennan. Tomorrow will come soon enough. But Giselle couldn't rest. She paced the rooms, took a long bath that should have been relaxing but wasn't, and finally curled up in a chair by the window, watching the snow fall over the garden below. What had she done? What had she agreed to? She must have dozed eventually, because she woke to pale winter sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of food. A breakfast had been laid out on a table in the sitting room. Fresh fruit and pastries, coffee and juice, more than she could possibly eat. She picked at it, her stomach too twisted with nerves to manage much. The day passed in a strange blur. Servants appeared, more pale, beautiful people with white hair and ageless faces, to help her bathe, to style her hair in an elaborate updo woven with silver thread and tiny white roses. They helped her into the wedding gown, lacing it up the back with practiced efficiency, and when Giselle finally looked at herself in the full-length mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a bride from another century, from a fairy tale or a ghost story, beautiful and doomed. It is time, Seraphine said softly, appearing in the doorway. The master waits. Giselle followed her down corridors that seemed different in the fading daylight, more real somehow, less like a dream. They descended a grand staircase into what must have been a ballroom, vast and gorgeous, lit by thousands of candles. White roses were everywhere, their scent almost overwhelming, and at the far end of the room stood Yaroslav. He wore formal attire, all black and silver, his white hair loose around his shoulders. He looked like something out of a dark romance, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. And when his crimson eyes met hers, Giselle felt something shift in her chest, some pull she couldn't explain and didn't want to examine too closely. There were others in the room, she realized. Dozens of vampires, all pale and white-haired and gorgeous, standing like statues along the walls. Witnesses, she supposed, or mourners waiting to see if she would survive the night. The ceremony was brief and conducted in a language Giselle didn't recognize, though she understood when Yaroslav turned to her and spoke in English. Giselle Brennan, do you take me as your husband, knowing what I am and what may come? Do you accept this bond of your own free will? Her voice shook, but she got the words out. I do. Then with this ring I claim you as mine. He slid a band of white gold onto her finger, set with a single ruby that gleamed like a drop of blood. My wife, my queen, my bride. Whatever fate brings, we face it together. He leaned in and kissed her, and Giselle's eyes fluttered closed. His lips were cool against hers, gentle, almost reverent. It was her first kiss, and it tasted of wine and roses and something darker, something that made her blood sing. When he pulled back, there was something fierce in his expression. Come, he said, taking her hand. We have until dawn. The ballroom emptied as he led her away, the other vampires melting into shadow. Yaroslav brought her to a different set of rooms, grander than the ones she'd spent the day in. The master's chambers, she realized. Their chambers now. I do not know what kills them, Yaroslav said. Once they were alone. He stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames. I have tried everything. Protective spells, wards, every kind of magic and medicine known to my kind. Some brides simply stopped breathing in their sleep. Others were found with no mark upon them. Their hearts simply stopped. One, he paused, pain flashing across his face. One burned from the inside as if consumed by flame. I could do nothing but watch. Giselle's throat was tight. How many? 7, he said quietly. 7 brides in 300 years. 7 women who came to me with hope and who I failed to protect. That's not very many, Giselle said, and he looked at her sharply. I mean, for 300 years. You could have tried more often, kept searching for the one who would survive. But you didn't. You waited decades between each attempt. Yaroslav's expression softened slightly. You are observant. Yes, I waited. Because each death destroyed something in me, and I needed time to remember why I was doing this. To find the strength to try again. Giselle moved closer to him, drawn by something she didn't fully understand. Tell me about them. The brides, who were they? He looked surprised by the question, but after a moment he began to speak. The first was named Eleanor. She was a noblewoman fleeing an arranged marriage to a cruel man. She had such spirit, such fire. She lasted until an hour before dawn, and then she was simply gone, as if her soul had been pulled from her body. The second was Maria, a scholar who sought immortality to continue her research. The third was Isabeau, running from a plague that had taken her entire village. The fourth. He continued through all 7 names, and Giselle listened, hearing the grief in his voice, the weight of all that loss. "You cared for them," she said when he finished. "Not at first, maybe, but by the end, you cared. How could I not?" Yaroslav met her eyes. They were brave and beautiful and full of life, and they trusted me to keep them safe. "Every failure is carved into my memory, every face, every final moment." "Then why did you bring me here?" Giselle asked. "Why risk that pain again?" "Because loneliness is its own kind of death," he said simply. "And because I believe you are different, Giselle. I feel it in my bones, in the blood. You are the one who will survive." "You're very confident," she said, trying for lightness and not quite managing it. "What makes me so special?" "I do not know yet," Yaroslav admitted. "But I intend to find out, and I intend to keep you alive no matter what it costs." The hours passed strangely. They talked, sitting by the fire, and Yaroslav told her about his life, about the centuries he'd lived and the world he'd seen change around him. He'd been turned during the reign of Peter the Great, a minor nobleman who had caught the attention of an ancient vampire queen. She'd made him what he was, taught him to survive, and then abandoned him to rule her territory when she grew bored and moved on. "I have been king of this region for 200 years, he said. "Vampires answer to me, and I maintain the peace between our world and the human one. It is a delicate balance, built on secrets and blood oaths and old magic." "And marriage?" Giselle asked. "How does that fit into vampire politics?" "A vampire king with a queen is stronger," Yaroslav explained. "The bond between us, if completed, would grant me greater power and you greater protection. It would also signal to other vampire lords that I am not to be challenged, that I have something to fight for beyond just territory. So I'm a political advantage." Giselle tried not to feel hurt by that. "You are much more than that," Yaroslav said, and his voice was intense now. "Or you will be if we survive the night. Giselle, I need you to understand something. When the curse takes my brides, I feel it happening, but I cannot stop it. It is like watching someone drown through glass. I can see everything, but I cannot reach them. Tonight I will not let that happen. I will break through whatever barrier separates us, even if it costs me everything I am." Before Giselle could respond, Yaroslav went rigid. His head snapped toward the window, eyes glowing brighter. "Something is wrong. What is it?" "The wards are failing." He was moving now, pulling her to her feet. "The protective spells around these rooms, around you, they're being drained." Giselle felt it then. A sudden chill in the air, a sense of something watching. "The curse?" "It is manifesting," Yaroslav said, and there was fear in his voice now, real fear. Earlier than ever before. "Giselle, listen to me. Whatever happens, do not let go of my hand. Stay with me, stay conscious, stay here." The cold intensified, and Giselle gasped as pain lanced through her chest. Her heart was beating too fast, too hard, like it was trying to escape her ribcage. "Yaroslav, I have you." He pulled her against him, one arm wrapped around her waist, his other hand gripping hers. "Fight it, Giselle, whatever it shows you, whatever you feel, remember that I am here. You are not alone." The world around her began to fracture. She saw images flashing, the previous brides dying in agony, Yaroslav's face twisted with grief, her own body cold and still in the marriage bed. The visions came faster, drowning her, pulling her down into darkness. But through it all she felt Yaroslav's presence, his arm around her, solid and real. His voice in her ear, speaking in that ancient language she didn't understand but somehow felt in her bones, and beneath it all something else. A warmth building in her chest, pushing back against the cold. "That's it," Yaroslav murmured. "Fight, my queen. Show the curse that you are stronger." Giselle didn't know what she was doing, didn't understand the power flowing through her, but she reached for it instinctively. The warmth spread through her veins like liquid gold, burning away the cold, shattering the visions. She heard something scream, not with sound but with magic, and then suddenly she could breathe again. She opened her eyes to find herself still in Yaroslav's arms, but they were no longer in the bedroom. They stood in some void of shadow and starlight, neither here nor there, and before them stood a figure made of darkness and ancient malice. "The curse," Yaroslav growled. "Show yourself." The figure laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Foolish king. You think this one is different? They are all the same, fragile human things breaking so easily." "She is not fragile," Yaroslav said, and his voice rang with power. "She is mine, and I will not let you take her." "You have no choice," the curse hissed. "I am bound to your bloodline, to every vampire of your line who dares to take a mortal bride. It is payment for your power, for your immortality. The price must be paid." "Who cursed you?" Giselle asked, finding her voice. The figure turned toward her, and she saw something shift in the shadows. Who did Yaroslav wrong that they would curse him like this? He killed my creator, the figure said, and there was such venom in the words. The queen who made him, who loved him, who gave him everything. He destroyed her for power, for territory, and I swore that he would never know love, never have the companionship he stole from her. Yaroslav's grip on Giselle tightened. Katerina was mad, he said coldly. She was killing indiscriminately, threatening to expose our kind to the world. I did what had to be done to protect everyone. You murdered her. The curse's scream shook the void around them. And now you will suffer for it forever and always. This bride will die like all the others. No. Giselle stepped forward, pulling Yaroslav with her. I won't, because I choose to stay. I choose him, and I choose this life, and your curse has no power over my free will. The curse laughed. Stupid girl, you think choice matters? You think love can break what was forged in blood and vengeance? Yes, Giselle said simply. I do. She didn't know where the certainty came from, but it filled her completely. She turned to Yaroslav, saw his crimson eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been hope. Whatever Katerina was to you, whatever happened between you, it's done. She's gone, and she wouldn't want this. No one who truly loved would want centuries of loneliness and death. She was insane, the curse spat, broken by the years. But her magic was strong, and I am her final creation, her lasting revenge. Then let it end, Giselle said. Let her rest and let him live. Let us both live. I cannot, the curse whispered, and for the first time, there was something other than malice in its voice. Sadness, maybe. I am bound to this purpose. I cannot stop. Then I will stop you, Yaroslav said. He released Giselle's hand and stepped forward, and suddenly he was burning with power, crimson light pouring from him like fire. I am Yaroslav Frost, king of the Northern Territories, and I claim my queen by right of conquest and bond. You will not have her. The curse screamed again, lunging for them, but Yaroslav was faster. He threw himself between Giselle and the darkness, and she watched in horror as shadow engulfed him. She could hear him shouting in that ancient language, could see the crimson light struggling against the dark. Without thinking, Giselle reached out and grabbed his hand again. The moment their skin touched, the warmth in her chest exploded outward, golden light meeting crimson, and together they blazed like a star. The curse shrieked, pulling back. No, this is impossible. You are human. You cannot. I am his wife, Giselle said, and her voice echoed with power she didn't know she possessed, his queen, his chosen partner, and I will not let you take him from me. The golden light poured through her, through both of them, and she understood suddenly what was happening. This was the bond, the marriage bond that should have formed between vampire and human bride. But the curse had always killed the brides before it could complete, before the human could become something more. Not this time. Giselle held onto Yaroslav and let the transformation wash through her. It didn't make her a vampire. She could still feel her heartbeat, still felt warm and alive, but it changed her nonetheless. Made her stronger, faster, connected to Yaroslav in ways that went beyond words. The curse couldn't touch her anymore, couldn't pull her soul away, couldn't stop her heart or burn her from within. She was protected by the bond, by the marriage itself, and the curse had no power against that. You broke it, Yaroslav breathed, staring at her with wonder. Giselle, you broke the curse. The figure of shadow was fading now, dissipating like smoke in wind. No, it whispered. Katerina's revenge, it cannot end like this. It can, Giselle said, and she felt pity for it now. It should. Let her rest. Let all of this rest. The last of the darkness faded, and suddenly they were back in the bedroom, the fire burning low in the hearth. Giselle stumbled, and Yaroslav caught her, holding her steady. Are you all right? He asked urgently. Giselle, talk to me. I'm fine, she said, and laughed because it was true. She felt better than fine. She felt alive and strong and connected to this strange man, her husband, in ways she was only beginning to understand. I think we did it. Yaroslav cupped her face in his hands, and she realized he was shaking. You did it. You broke a curse that has haunted me for 3 centuries. You saved yourself and you saved me and I. He stopped, seeming lost for words. You what? Giselle asked softly. I am falling in love with you, he said, and his voice was raw with honesty. I know it is too soon. I know we barely know each other, but Giselle, you are extraordinary. And she kissed him, rising on her toes to press her lips to his, cutting off the words. This kiss was different from the one at the altar. This one was warm and alive and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Yaroslav was looking at her like she was a miracle. The sun will rise soon, he said. I should take you somewhere safe, somewhere you can rest and stay with me, Giselle said. I know you have to avoid the sun, but stay here. I don't want to be alone. Something shifted in Yaroslav's expression, pleasure and surprise and deep affection. As you wish, my queen. They settled into the massive bed together, Yaroslav pulling her into his arms as if she was something precious. Giselle let herself relax against his chest, listening to the silence where his heartbeat should have been. What happens now? She asked quietly. I mean, I'm married to the Vampire King. I broke an ancient curse. What does that mean for my life? It means you are safe, Yaroslav said. Your family is safe. And it means, if you choose, that you can stay here with me. Learn about my world, take your place as queen, help me maintain the balance between vampire and human societies. And if I don't choose that, then I will find you a beautiful home anywhere in the world, he said without hesitation. I will ensure you want for nothing, and I will visit you as often as you permit. You saved my life, Giselle. I am in your debt, not the other way around. Giselle was quiet for a moment, thinking, my family, can I see them? Talk to them? Of course. I will send word that their debts are cleared, that you are safe and well. If you wish to see them in person, we can arrange it. Yaroslav's hand stroked through her hair, gentle and soothing. I will never keep you prisoner here, Giselle. You are free to choose your path. I want to stay, Giselle said, surprising herself with how certain she felt. At least for now, I want to understand this world, understand what I've become. And I want to know you, Yaroslav, really know you. She felt him smile against her hair. Nothing would make me happier. The sun rose beyond the heavy curtains, and Yaroslav's breathing deepened into something like sleep, though Giselle knew it wasn't quite the same. Vampires didn't need sleep as humans did, but the daylight hours pulled them into a kind of rest anyway. She should have been exhausted, but she felt wide awake, energized by everything that had happened. Carefully, she slipped out of Yaroslav's arms and padded across the room to the window. The curtains were thick and heavy, blocking out all light, but she pulled one back just slightly to peek outside. The garden was beautiful in daylight, covered in fresh snow that sparkled like diamonds. In the distance, she could see the walls that separated the estate from the rest of Los Angeles, the modern city that had no idea this pocket of ancient magic existed in its heart. You should rest, Seraphine's voice said behind her, and Giselle turned to find the vampire woman in the doorway, a tray of food in her hands. You have been through much. I'm not tired, Giselle said, letting the curtain fall closed. Is he okay? Yaroslav, I mean. The son, he is safe here. These chambers were designed to protect him. Seraphine set the tray on a table. You should eat. You will need your strength. Giselle realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since breakfast yesterday, and everything that had happened since had burned through whatever energy she had. She sat down and ate mechanically fruit and cheese and bread that tasted better than it had any right to while Seraphine watched. I thought you would die, Seraphine said finally. We all did. We have watched 7 brides enter this house, and we have mourned them all. But you are different. I got lucky, Giselle said. No. Seraphine shook her head. Luck had nothing to do with it. You were strong and you chose to fight. That is why you survived. The bond, Giselle said slowly. When it formed, I felt different. Stronger. Am I still human? Mostly. Seraphine said. The bond does not make you vampire, but it changes you. You will age more slowly now, heal faster, be harder to kill. You will also be connected to Yaroslav in ways that go beyond the physical. You will sense his emotions, sometimes his thoughts, and he will sense yours. That should have been terrifying, but instead Giselle felt comforted by it. Have you ever been bonded to someone? Seraphine's expression softened with old sadness. Once, very long ago. He was killed in a territorial war, and I have not sought another bond since. But I remember what it was like to never be truly alone, to have someone understand you completely. It is a gift, Miss Brennan. Treasure it. Giselle finished eating and let Seraphine help her change into more comfortable clothes, soft trousers, and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Giselle used to make in a month. Then, despite her certainty that she wouldn't be able to sleep, she found herself drawn back to the bed, to Yaroslav's still form. She curled up beside him, and this time when she closed her eyes, she drifted into dreams filled with starlight and roses and crimson eyes that looked at her like she was worth fighting for. When she woke, it was to darkness and the feeling of fingers running through her hair. Giselle opened her eyes to find Yaroslav awake, propped up on one elbow and watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Hi, she said, feeling suddenly shy. Hello, my queen, he murmured. Did you rest well? Better than I expected. Giselle sat up, stretching. What time is it? Just past sunset. The night is young. Yaroslav reached out and took her hand, examining the wedding ring on her finger. How are you feeling? Any pain? Any lingering effects from the curse? I feel fine. Better than fine, actually. Giselle hesitated. Seraphine told me about the bond, about what it means. Are you frightened? Yaroslav asked gently. Should I be? I will do my best to respect your privacy, he said. The connection goes both ways. I cannot read your thoughts unless you are broadcasting them strongly, and you will learn to shield your emotions in time. But yes, we are bound now in ways that cannot be easily undone. I don't want it undone, Giselle said and realized she meant it. It's strange and overwhelming, but it's not bad. I can feel you, I think, like a warmth in the back of my mind. Yaroslav's eyes glowed brighter. And I can feel you, your curiosity, your strength. It is remarkable, Giselle. You are remarkable. Over the following nights, Giselle began to understand what her new life would be like. Yaroslav introduced her to the vampires who made up his court, elegant, dangerous creatures who bowed to her as their queen and watched her with curious ancient eyes. She met Lucien, Yaroslav's second-in-command, a stern vampire with white hair worn in a military cut. She met Alessandra, who managed the estate's finances and spoke 6 languages. She met Victor and Natasha, twin vampires who served as guards, and dozens of others whose names and faces blurred together. They were respectful but distant, clearly waiting to see if she would last, if she was truly strong enough to stand beside their king. Giselle also learned about the world she'd married into. Yaros showed her the hidden corners of Los Angeles where vampires gathered, underground clubs where humans danced unknowingly alongside immortals, blood banks that served a dual purpose, ancient libraries hidden beneath modern office buildings. "We live in the shadows," Yaroslav explained as they walked through one such library, rows of books stretching into darkness. "We have survived for millennia by adapting, by hiding in plain sight. The modern world makes it easier in some ways. People explain away anything strange as special effects or mental illness, but harder in others. Technology means everything is recorded, tracked. We must be more careful than ever." "Do humans know you exist?" Giselle asked, running her fingers along the spines of books that looked older than countries. "Some," Yaroslav said. "There are families who have allied with us for generations, who provide protection and secrecy in exchange for our gifts. There are hunters who know and seek to destroy us. And there are government organizations who suspect but cannot prove. It is a delicate balance." "And you maintain it, I try." He pulled a book from the shelf and showed her a record of treaties and agreements written in languages that shifted and changed as she looked at them. "This is the weight of kingship, Giselle. Not power for its own sake, but responsibility. Every vampire in this territory looks to me to keep them safe, to maintain the peace. Every decision I make affects thousands of lives." Giselle was beginning to understand the loneliness she'd sensed in him. "It's a lot to carry alone." "Yes," Yaroslav said quietly. "It is." "You don't have to anymore," Giselle said, taking his hand. "I'm here now, let me help." The look he gave her was full of such raw gratitude that it made her chest ache. "You already have more than you know." As the weeks passed, Giselle found herself falling into a routine. She spent the days learning reading from Yaroslav's extensive library, taking lessons from Seraphine in vampire history and politics, even training with Victor and Natasha to build strength and speed now that the bond had enhanced her physical abilities. The nights she spent with Yaroslav, sometimes attending court functions where she was presented as the queen who had survived, the one who had broken the curse. Sometimes they simply talked, sharing stories and dreams and slowly building something that felt like genuine partnership. And sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, they explored the growing attraction between them. Yaroslav was always careful, always gentle, treating her like she was something precious. Giselle found herself wanting more, wanting to close the distance between them fully, but she also appreciated his patience. This was all still so new, still overwhelming in the best way. One night, about a month after their wedding, Giselle woke from sleep to find Yaroslav standing at the window, staring out at the garden below. She could feel his distress through the bond, sharp and painful. "What's wrong?" she asked, getting out of bed and going to him. "I was thinking about the others," Yaroslav said quietly. "The brides who came before you. Wondering if things would have been different if I had fought harder, searched for the solution sooner." "You can't think like that," Giselle said firmly. "You did everything you could. The curse was ancient magic. You said yourself you tried everything. But if I had been smarter, faster, better, then maybe you still would have failed," Giselle interrupted. "Or maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe it took all 7 attempts to weaken the curse enough for me to break through. You don't know, and torturing yourself with what-ifs won't change anything." Yaroslav turned to look at her, and there was such pain in his eyes. "They deserved better than death." "Yes," Giselle agreed. "They did, so honor them by living well, by making this work, this marriage, this life. Be happy, Yaroslav, that's the best way to remember them." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "How did I find you?" he whispered into her hair. "How did I get so lucky?" "Same way I did," Giselle said, wrapping her arms around him. "We both took a chance on something impossible." In the second month of their marriage, Giselle finally worked up the courage to ask about seeing her family. Yaroslav arranged everything, a car to take her to her mother's hospital, where she found that her mom had been moved to a private room and was receiving the best care money could buy. The debts were gone, the collections notices had stopped, and her mother looked better than Giselle had seen her in years. "Baby," her mom said, crying and holding her tight. "They told me you got married, that your husband took care of everything. I don't understand how it's complicated." Giselle said, not sure how to explain. "But I'm happy, Mom, really happy and safe." Her brother showed up an hour later, bursting with excitement about MIT, about the full scholarship that had mysteriously appeared, about the apartment near campus that he'd been offered. "Is this because of your husband?" he asked. "Giselle, who did you marry?" Someone powerful, Giselle said carefully. Someone who keeps his promises. Don't worry about me, okay? I know what I'm doing. They wanted to meet Yaroslav, of course, and she promised to arrange it soon. But first, she needed to make sure they could handle the truth. She spent the rest of the visit preparing them carefully, hinting at things, testing how much they could accept. When she finally returned to the estate, Yaroslav was waiting anxiously. How did it go? Good, Giselle said. Really good. They want to meet you. And you want me to meet them? Yaroslav looked uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. Giselle, I am not. I do not know how to be around human families. What if I frighten them? What if they'll love you, Giselle said, taking his hands. Because I love you. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Yaroslav went very still. You love me? Giselle's heart was pounding, but she didn't take it back. Yes, I do. I know it's only been 2 months. I know this whole thing started as a transaction, but Yaroslav, I love you. You're kind and thoughtful, and you carry so much on your shoulders, but you never complain. You've been patient with me, gentle, and you've let me find my own place in this world instead of forcing me into a role. How could I not love you? Yaroslav's hands tightened on hers, and when he spoke, his voice shook. I love you too. I have loved you since you stood in the void and refused to let the curse take you, since you fought for us when you barely knew me. Giselle, you are my heart, my queen, my everything. He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Giselle melted into it. This kiss was different from all the others. This one was a promise, a commitment, a declaration. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Yaroslav rested his forehead against hers. I want to bond with you fully, he said quietly. Not just the marriage bond, but the blood bond. I want to share my immortality with you so that you can live beside me not just for a human lifetime, but for centuries. But only if you want that. Only if you choose it, Giselle's breath caught. You want to turn me into a vampire? Not exactly, Yaroslav said. The blood bond would not make you fully vampire, but it would stop your aging, give you greater strength and speed. You would still be human in most ways, still need food and sleep, still able to walk in sunlight. But you would be tied to me completely, and you would live as long as I do. It was a huge decision, and Giselle knew she should take time to think about it. But looking into Yaroslav's crimson eyes, feeling his love and hope through the bond, she knew what her answer would be. Yes, she said. I choose that. I choose you for as long as we both exist. The blood bond ritual took place 3 nights later, under a new moon when magic ran strongest. The vampire court gathered in a ceremonial chamber deep beneath the estate, all of them dressed in formal attire, all watching with ancient eyes as Yaroslav and Giselle stood before an altar carved from black stone. Lucien presided, speaking in the old language that Giselle was slowly learning to understand. The ceremony was beautiful in strange offerings of wine and roses, candles burning with colored flames, incantations that made the air shimmer with power. And then Yaroslav took a silver knife and cut his palm, letting crimson blood well up. Drink, he said softly, offering his hand, and be bound to me for all eternity. Giselle didn't hesitate. She pressed her lips to his palm and drank, tasting copper and magic and something that was purely Yaroslav. Power flooded through her, more intense than anything she'd felt during the curse breaking. She felt her cells changing, restructuring, accepting the gift of immortality. When it was done, she felt different, stronger, sharper, more alive than ever before. And the bond with Yaroslav had deepened impossibly, until she could feel him as clearly as she felt her own heartbeat. My queen, Yaroslav said, and there was such reverence in his voice. My wife, my blood, my eternal companion. My king, Giselle replied, the words feeling right and true. My husband, my heart, my forever. The court erupted in applause. Vampires who had been coolly distant now genuinely celebrating. Giselle realized they had been waiting for this, for proof that she was truly one of them, that she would stay and stand beside their king. The celebration lasted until dawn, and Giselle found herself embraced by vampires who had seemed so alien just weeks ago. They shared stories and laughter, and she began to feel like maybe, just maybe, she belonged here. As the sun rose and the vampires dispersed to rest, Yaroslav pulled Giselle into their private chambers. Are you all right? He asked, searching her face. The change can be disorienting. I feel amazing, Giselle said honestly. Like I could run for miles or lift a car. Is it always like this? The initial rush will fade, Yaroslav said with a smile. But you will retain the strength and speed. You will also need to feed differently now, not blood. But you will crave iron-rich foods, red meat and dark greens. Your body will tell you what it needs. Giselle nodded, filing that information away. Can we go outside? I want to see the sunrise. Yaroslav hesitated. I cannot join you. I know, Giselle said gently. But I want to see it just once more before I adjust to keeping your hours fully. He walked her to a balcony that faced east, staying in the shadows while she stepped into the growing light. The sun rose over Los Angeles in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and warm on her face. Giselle stood there for a long moment, saying goodbye to her old life, to the daylight she would rarely see now. When she turned back, Yaroslav was watching her with such love that it took her breath away. "Worth it?" he asked quietly. "Absolutely," Giselle said, going to him and taking his hand. "Every single moment worth it." Over the following months, Giselle grew into her role as queen. She learned vampire politics, mediated disputes, and even helped negotiate a treaty with a neighboring territory. She discovered she had a talent for diplomacy, for finding common ground and soothing ancient grudges. She also brought her family into her new world, carefully and gradually. Her mother and brother visited the estate, and while Yaroslav was nervous, he charmed them both completely. Her mom adored him, and her brother was fascinated by the library and the history. They never told them about the vampire part. That secret was too dangerous, but they accepted that Giselle had married into an old, wealthy family with unusual customs. It was close enough to the truth. One night, about 6 months into their marriage, Giselle was working in the study when Seraphine appeared in the doorway. "My queen, there is someone here to see you. She claims to have important information about the curse." Giselle looked up sharply. "The curse is broken," perhaps, Seraphine said. "But she insists on speaking with you. She says she knew one of the previous brides." Curious now, Giselle followed Seraphine to a receiving room where a woman waited. She was human, elderly, with kind eyes and worn hands. When she saw Giselle, she smiled. "You're the one who survived," the woman said. "Thank God, I was so afraid he would keep trying, keep sacrificing girls." "Who are you?" Giselle asked gently. "My name is Margaret Chen. My sister was Maria, the second bride." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She was brilliant, so desperate to continue her research. When the vampire king offered her immortality, she thought it was a gift. She had no idea it was a death sentence. Giselle's heart ached. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm not here for apologies," Margaret said. "I'm here because I've spent 40 years researching the curse, trying to understand what killed my sister, and I think I finally know." Yaroslav appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "Mrs. Chen, it has been a long time." "Your Majesty," Margaret said, inclining her head. "I hope you don't mind me coming here, but I thought you should know what I discovered." "Please," Yaroslav said, gesturing for her to continue. Margaret pulled out a worn journal. The curse was designed to feed on the bride's fear. The more afraid she was, the stronger it became. It showed visions of death, of pain, and that fear opened the door for the magic to kill. "But your bride," she looked at Giselle. "You weren't afraid, were you, when the curse attacked?" Giselle thought back to that night, to the void and the shadow figure. "I was terrified," she said, "but I was also angry, and I was determined to fight." "That's it," Margaret said excitedly. "That's the key. The other brides, from what I could learn, they all succumbed to fear. But you fought back, and that broke the curse's hold." Yaroslav was very still. "If I had known, if I had told them to fight instead of just trying to protect them, you would have achieved nothing," Margaret said firmly. "Because the fear was natural, instinctive. You cannot logic your way out of terror when ancient magic is trying to kill you." "But somehow," she nodded at Giselle, "she found the strength anyway." "I had help," Giselle said, looking at Yaroslav. "I wasn't alone. He was there, fighting with me, and that made all the difference." Margaret smiled through her tears. "My sister would be happy to know that you succeeded, that her death wasn't completely in vain, that it led eventually to this." She stood and offered Giselle the journal. "This is all my research. Maybe it will help someone someday." Giselle took the journal carefully. "Thank you for coming here, for sharing this. It means more than you know." After Margaret left, Giselle and Yaroslav sat together in the study, reading through decades of research and notes. It was painful seeing the details of how each bride had died, but it was also illuminating. "She's right," Yaroslav said finally. "Fear was the key, and I made it worse by being so focused on protecting them that I didn't teach them how to protect themselves." "You couldn't have known," Giselle said, squeezing his hand. "But I should have," Yaroslav said. "I am ancient, powerful. I should have seen the pattern." "Stop," Giselle said firmly. "We've had this conversation before. You did your best, and now you know better. Use that knowledge to help others, to make sure no one else suffers the same way." Yaroslav looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You are right, as always. I try," Giselle said with a small smile. That night marked a turning point. Yaroslav began sharing Margaret's research with other vampire lords, warning them about bonding curses and fear-based magic. He established new protocols, new ways of protecting human brides, and teaching them to defend themselves. And slowly the vampire world began to change, became a little less secretive, a little more open to the idea of human-vampire partnerships. A year after their wedding, Giselle stood on the balcony of their chambers, watching the stars. Yaroslav joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "Everything," Giselle said. "How much has changed in a year, how different my life is now." "Do you regret it?" Yaroslav asked quietly. "Not for a second," Giselle said, turning in his arms to face him. "I love you, Yaroslav. I love this life we've built. I love being your queen. And I love you," Yaroslav said, kissing her forehead. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You have given me everything I thought I could never have: companionship, partnership, hope for the future. We gave those things to each other, Giselle corrected. That's how partnerships work. They stood together under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, and Giselle felt perfectly content. This wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself a year ago. It was stranger, more complicated, full of ancient magic and vampire politics and secrets that most humans would never believe. But it was hers. She had chosen it, fought for it, and built it alongside someone who loved her completely. Years passed, flowing like water. Giselle watched her brother graduate from MIT, saw her mother's health continue to improve. She attended vampire courts across the world, standing beside Yaroslav as his equal and partner. She learned ancient languages and modern technology, became skilled in diplomacy and combat, grew into the role of queen in ways she'd never imagined. And through it all, Yaroslav was beside her, supporting her, challenging her, loving her with an intensity that never faded. They had disagreements. Of course, both of them were too stubborn for perfect harmony, but they always worked through them, always came back to each other. On their 5th anniversary, Yaroslav gave her a gift, a portrait of the 7 brides who had come before her. Not death portraits, but paintings imagining them as they might have been alive, happy, fulfilled. I commissioned these, Yaroslav said as Giselle stared at the paintings with tears in her eyes, because you were right. The best way to honor them is to live well, to be happy. And I wanted them to be part of our story, not forgotten or hidden away. They're beautiful, Giselle whispered. Thank you. They hung the portraits in a gallery off the main hall where everyone who visited could see them. Giselle made sure each bride's story was told truthfully, with respect and remembrance. On their 10th anniversary, Giselle stood before the vampire court and announced new laws, protections for human-vampire partnerships, rights for bonded humans, consequences for any vampire who harmed their human bride or groom. The laws passed unanimously, and Yaroslav looked at her with such pride that she felt like she could fly. On their 20th anniversary, Giselle's mother passed away peacefully in her sleep, at a very old age and surrounded by family. Giselle mourned her deeply, grateful for the extra years they'd had together but aching at the loss. Yaroslav held her through the grief, patient and steady, and slowly she healed. Her brother stayed in touch, grew old himself, had children and grandchildren who called Giselle Aunt Giselle, and never quite understood why she never seemed to age. She attended weddings and christenings, watched generations pass, and marveled at the human capacity for growth and change. And through all of it, Yaroslav remained constant. Her husband, her partner, her great love. One night, after nearly 30 years of marriage, they lay together in their bed and talked about the future. Do you ever miss it? Yaroslav asked. Being fully human, aging normally, living a mortal life. Sometimes, Giselle admitted. I miss the simplicity of it, the feeling that time was precious because it was limited. But I don't regret my choice. This life with you is worth everything I gave up. I worry sometimes that I am selfish, Yaroslav said quietly. That I should have let you go, let you live a normal life. You didn't trap me, Giselle said firmly. I chose this. I choose it every day. Stop second-guessing decisions we made together. Yaroslav smiled and pulled her closer. What would I do without you? Good thing you'll never have to find out, Giselle said, settling against his chest. They fell into comfortable silence, and Giselle let herself imagine the centuries ahead. More changes, more challenges, but also more love, more partnership, more moments like this. She thought about the girl she'd been, standing at those iron gates in the snow, terrified and desperate. She'd been so sure she was walking to her death, so convinced that accepting Yaroslav's offer was a suicide mission. Instead, she'd found life, real, vibrant, extraordinary life. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? Yaroslav asked. For taking a chance on me, for believing I was different. Thank you for proving me right, Yaroslav said, kissing the top of her head. For surviving, for staying, for loving me despite everything. Despite everything. Giselle laughed softly. Yaroslav, I love you because of everything. Because you're complicated and ancient and powerful, but also kind and thoughtful and willing to change. You're not perfect, but you're perfect for me. And you are perfect for me, Yaroslav murmured. My queen, my heart, my eternal companion. I love you, Giselle. I will love you for all the centuries to come. I love you too, Giselle said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They drifted into rest together, wrapped in each other's arms, safe and content in the home they had built. The mansion that had once housed so much tragedy had become a place of love and laughter, of second chances and new beginnings, and in the morning, or rather, in the evening, when they woke, they would rise together and face whatever challenges the night brought. They would rule their territory with wisdom and compassion, protect their people, and continue building the life they had chosen. But for now, they simply held each other and let the bond between them hum with love and contentment. Every bride before her had died by dawn, but Giselle had woken in the Vampire King's arms, alive and breathing. and she had chosen to stay there, to build something beautiful from tragedy, to love fearlessly despite all the reasons not to. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, least of all Giselle herself. But it was the right ending, the true ending, the happy ending they had both fought so hard to achieve. And it was, in its own way, just the beginning.